have to understand that there's not a monolithic mind in any group. And in the Nikkei community, as reflected by the Japanese American Citizens League, there's not a monolithic mind. So you had some persons who thought it was a good idea and some persons who thought it was not a good idea. Why rock the boat? You know, we came through this period, and of course there are many people then and even now who chose to put the experience of incarceration in the back of their mind. They would not even discuss it with their children. And it was the Commission on Internment, the Federal Commission, that had these public hearings around the country that brought people out, some people who testified for the first time, recalling their experience in the camps. So in the Japanese American Citizens League, we had the same thing. I think our board, we had 25 people on the board or something like that. So in that group, you had people who thought redress was a great idea, and you had some who thought it was a terrible idea. And so the committee would make its report, and there would be arguments and debates and meetings. And this is not a negative in any sense. To me, it's democracy in action, where you have an issue and people are not in total agreement, and you have open and free discussions. People express their positions and their points of view, and you ultimately come to some solution. Among the people who were certainly respected and were level-headed persons in the board, Dr. Minoru Masuda was one who I remember in particular. And when Masuda would speak, people would listen. And so there were ups and downs, as in any group, with an issue that is new, perhaps controversial, with an unexpected result. As a matter of fact, even I was somewhat dubious that our government would ever allocate funds for redress, even though from a conceptual standpoint it was feasible, but from a practical standpoint, how feasible was it? And reflecting back on and in developing the concept for reparations for Nikkei, the idea of reparations for freed slaves came up. And the idea of 40 acres and a mule. In theory, that was the law, but nobody ever got it. And there is presently underway a movement headed by a Harvard law professor to follow through on reparations for African Americans. And I'm 3 generations removed from slavery on my mother's side, and I jokingly said, where's my 40 acres and where's my mule? But I would not seriously expect that anybody would pay me reparations for slavery of my great-great-grandfather. But at the same time, there are many people who would certainly not agree with me. There are people who believe that persons whose history includes slavery are entitled to reparations. And now the movement for reparations for former slaves and descendants of slaves is using the reparations for Japanese Americans as a basis for asserting their position that they're entitled to reparations. And so it's sort of like the chicken and the egg. the reparations for Japanese Americans was piggybacked on reparations for former slaves and descendants of slaves. And now the reparations movement for descendants of slaves is piggybacking on reparations for Japanese Americans. So at any rate, when it happened, it was, I suppose it was in part due to the leadership of people like Mike Lowry. And I don't think Mike gets the credit for the leadership that he exhibited while in Congress or when he was governor of the state of Washington. But he was a significant force in moving ahead with the law which created the reparations. And then there were 4 Nikkei members of Congress who joined in it, and they were powerful persons in Congress, so they were able to get something done. So at any rate, back to the question of the local chapter, it was a normal process of a new idea, a radical idea, where some people thought it was a good idea and some people thought it was not. Some people thought the time was right and some people thought the time was not right. And some people thought it would rock the boat and some people thought they should not rock the boat. So when you put it all together, it comes out, and finally in the local chapter we had a unanimous position that we would proceed with a movement for reparations.